President Trump is back in the White House this morning. He left the G7 meeting last night a day early to deal with the escalating conflict in the Middle East. An administration official also tells NBC News Trump has requested the National Security Council be prepared in the Situation Room. The White House announced his early departure from Canada just an hour after the president urged residents in Tehran to immediately evacuate. Writing on Truth Social, quote, "Iran should have signed the deal I told them to sign." He was asked about that on Air Force One overnight.
What's the thinking on the call for Tehran to evacuate? Is there a threat or is there incoming? What was the thinking on the call evacuation?
I want people to be safe. And that's always possible. I think like that could happen. I just want people to be safe.
Is there any new concern about U.S. troops or assets in the region at all today?
Great people that know how to protect themselves.
And when you say better, what's the
They'll come down so hard if they do anything to our people.
You know, Karen, some ominous signs. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but the president last night warning residents of Tehran to evacuate immediately. That's not an easy thing to do. It's chaos there. They're not even getting much guidance from their own government. They don't have the elaborate bunker system that the Israelis have. But you add on top of that, the president also announcing a meeting this morning of his top national security officials. Sounds like ominous signs for Iran, suggesting that perhaps the United States may become involved in this conflict. What can you tell us?
Well, you know, one thing we know about the president is he always thinks that there is a deal in here somewhere. But I think it's becoming pretty clear that he is about to face his biggest test as commander-in-chief and as the leader of a world power, and that is whether or not to get involved in this conflict. Whether, for instance, to give Israel the bunker-busting bombs that they would need, U.S. bombs, to really go after the Iran nuclear facilities, which are underground. And if he does that, that is going to not only be the end of, potentially be the beginning of a remaking of the Middle East, but it would also, I think, really deeply divide his own MAGA coalition.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask you about, Jonathan Martin. It seems to me the president has two choices as we move forward. One is to get involved and possibly help Israel bring about regime change in Iran. That, of course, there are opportunities there, but history has shown us in the Middle East there's a lot more opportunity for destabilization, but also a great divide inside the MAGA coalition with people like Tucker Carlson and others saying that it might spell the end of the Trump presidency. That's on one side. On the other side, you have traditional conservatives who have seen Iran as the epicenter of terror since 1979. And will Donald Trump take the blame for not finishing off the Ayatollah when he had a chance to do it in 2025? Well, you know, so either way he goes, he's going to upset people in his own base. Take us inside that debate in the Republican coalition.
Trump said it pretty clearly over the weekend. He said, I decide what America first means, which kind of reminds us of that great saying, I am the decider, that we heard from a previous president. The truth is, Joe, Trump doesn't have strong feelings about on Iran policy. Trump wants to be on the side of what's popular and what's going to make him look good. And I think, look, he was uncertain about the Israelis going in. I think Bibi knew that. I think Bibi was deeply concerned that Trump was gonna try to find some deal with the Iranians, and so Bibi went ahead with the attacks to preempt Trump doing precisely that deal. And that's why you saw the attacks launched last week. Trump, of course, says that the attacks were well done, good on the Israelis, because they were successful. But, Joe, you know, if it hadn't gone well, that first wave of attacks, Trump would have run like a scalded dog from Israel and from Netanyahu. But it's only because they go well that Trump's now on the side of go after the Iranians. But going forward, it's going to be a harder choice for Trump because, yes, there are going to be questions about what role the U.S. plays. Is it troops? Is it air support? Is it just our weapons that the Israelis are using? It's going to be hard for Trump to avoid those questions going forward. And by the way, I think part of the reason why he left early the G7 was not to go spend 8 hours today in the sit room. That's not Donald Trump. He doesn't want to be forced to answer those questions from his contemporaries in the G7 hour after hour out there in the Canadian Rockies.
Yeah, and I've got to say, the challenges, the greatest challenges lie ahead for the president in making decisions, because it's one thing to sit back during the first and second strikes. It's quite another as chaos begins to break out in Tehran and perhaps in the entire region. Karen, you know, politics, my gosh, we see it time and time again. How the changing of presidencies, where you have one president that loathes the prior president, or at least what the prior president did. I always, you know, we can go back and look at Barack Obama, who wanted to define his presidency by not being Bush and Cheney, and yet he continued so many of their policies on the war on terror, especially. He upped drone attacks and found out he had to do a lot of things that he didn't want to do. You could go back to Bill Clinton criticizing George H.W. Bush on China, but then adopting basically George H.W. Bush's position on China. Here, you have Donald Trump being frustrated by the same two leaders that haunted Joe Biden for his last 2 years in office, Benjamin Netanyahu and Vladimir Putin. And here Donald Trump finds himself in the same position with two obstinate leaders who don't care what the American president has to say, whether he is a Democrat or a Republican.
And also not really appreciating the irony that for all he has criticized Barack Obama for the Iran nuclear deal, here he is himself desperately seeking a negotiated solution with the Iranians.